Was sick. I was frustrated because of what I was seeing in the camera lens. Of all times for my video camera to quit working, I was furious. And then I just did what I had to do. I kept shooting, hoping something would be recorded, something that I could decide later on if I had any sanity left. Because everything that I had prior to this moment was gone. All of my logic was gone. Nothing seemed real or right anymore. As I filmed the video, I noticed that it would distort the closer that I got to the black obelisk, which I have taken to call it. And I realized that the farther away I got, the less distortion would happen. So I ran back as far as I could and tried to record something. After taking the video, I ran back to my pack and I took my 35mm camera out and I took pictures of everything at the site. I have some of those pictures here and we can look at those now. Some of these are out of focus so that you believe they're real. Because as I have been told, if they're too sharp, they're obviously not real. Again, this is the obelisk from a long distance. It was 9 feet by 2.5 by about 3.5 or 4 feet wide. It had 6 sides, 6 definite sides. It was made out of something that felt like granite or marble. It was hard like stone. And it was cold like dry ice. Because eventually I did go up and touch it. People have said, oh, these pictures have been manipulated. Well, what you're looking at is not a digital copy. These are 35mm slides. These are the originals. You can see the definition between the sides and the top and the bottom. This, in my mind, after thinking about this for a long time, I don't necessarily call this a ship or a craft, but possibly a toolbox, possibly a container for something. I don't know. I don't have those answers. Some people have stated that this possibly could have been an entry point and an exit, possibly a biomorphic gate to transfer from one dimension to another.
Some members of the Alliance have stated that they felt that it might be, the reason when Jonathan touched it, it wouldn't move, is because it's actually anchored to 2 points at the same time, here and the home world or wherever that is. So it's actually in 2 places at the same time. You can't move it. It won't budge.
The negatives or the slides of this have been looked at and verified to have not been digitally manipulated by more than one source, out of my hands, independent of me.
Art Bell was one. I imagine most people here know Art Bell. So Art Bell was one, Eastman Kodak was the other.
This is a pretty good example of what I saw. To give you an idea of how I came across this thing, after I knocked the creature down, I became instantly, violently sick. So sick that I could not control all of my bodily functions. I had diarrhea, I had nausea. I couldn't stand for more than about 5 or 6 minutes at the most without falling to the ground. I did my best to try to regain some kind of strength, some kind of composure. But again, the sickness would come and overtake me, and I would lay on the ground, unable to move, unable to get up. Some people have said, well, why didn't you just run away? I couldn't. I could not move. I laid there for probably more than an hour, trying to move in a 10-foot circle, where I had no ability to stand. I would stand and I would fall down. At one point I stood and I fell and I tore my shirt against a tree. And then I began to hear a sound that was like a harmonic coming from somewhere out there. At first I thought, oh, it's a hiker, it's another hiker, it's a camper. They can help me. And I needed help. And I listened and I stood up and I tried to find where that sound was coming from. And it was an irritating sound, almost a low ebb harmonic sound. And I would walk and I would listen, and then I couldn't hear it any longer, and I'd get frustrated and I'd get sick and I'd get angry. I had to keep in the moment. I had to think of things like, can I take the next step without falling down? Can I survive the next 5 minutes? At one point, I didn't know if this was reality or not. And I would stand up and count my fingers to keep telling myself that yes, this wasn't a dream and I was still functioning somewhat. After a few moments, I heard the sound again. And again I crawled toward what I heard and what I thought was hopefully some help. And through the trees I saw what looked like a mirage. I saw the trees and the light bend just slightly. But this was unusual because it was an overcast day. But that's where the sound was coming from. And so I went through the brush, waiting, hoping somebody would be there. And I went down the hill and over the rise, and I saw this black thing. And it wasn't help. And I looked at it, and I fell against it. And the cold from the surface burned my hand as if it was dry ice. And it was hard, and it was cold. But I felt like there was some other presence there. Like it wasn't just a cold piece of stone. Like there was some kind of consciousness that I can't explain. I looked around and I noticed this thing was not touching the ground. And I got sick. And I couldn't move. And I was angry because this didn't fit into my world. And I questioned my sanity, as I do now and have ever since. But I know I wasn't insane, and I'm not now. And I know what I saw, and it was there.
Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. And I think everybody here should be pretty comfortable with that.
To sum up